Everyone. This is Adam Hops from the National Operations Center of Excellence. Thank you for joining today's webinar on short-term prediction for proactive transportation management. We are going to begin the webinar in just a moment. We have people coming into the room. And as a reminder, as those people come into the room, you will be muted throughout the webinar. We will have a Q&A session and the opportunity to interact with our presenters. To do that, please use the Q&A pod that you can find on your Zoom toolbar. If you have any questions for me or logistical questions, please use the webinar chat. And look into the webinar chat. We'll be sharing information on how to receive the webinar recording and any follow-up activities. So as a reminder, this is our 40th webinar of the year from the National Operations Center of Excellence. All of our webinars are recorded, and this one will be shared on the YouTube channel, NOCO YouTube channel, with all of our other webinars, and we will distribute it via the newsletter. So I'll put the newsletter sign up in the box momentarily, and please, if you haven't already, sign up for the newsletter to get a recording of the webinar. And then we do have closed captioning services available. Again, use your Zoom toolbar to hit those closed captioning options. If that's your preferred way to consume the presentations, and those will be available on the YouTube channel as well when it gets distributed. So I'd like to thank David Hale of Leidos for organizing this webinar. He is going to go through presentations and introduce our speakers. And again, if you need anything from me, please use the webinar chat and use the Q&A box for any questions for the presenters. David, thank you again. I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thanks so much, Adam. Good afternoon, everyone. This is David Hale with Leidos. Thanks so much for joining our webinar today. Next slide, please. So in today's first presentation, Mohammed and I will discuss some findings from the short-term prediction project sponsored by Federal Highways. Next slide, please. So in our project, short-term prediction was defined as a continuous real-time prediction of traffic conditions that occurs somewhere between 15 minutes into the future and 1 hour into the future. There's now a growing body of research evidence and successful real-world deployments to show that these short-term predictions can improve the effectiveness of traffic management strategies and can bring significant mobility and safety benefits. Also, implementing short-term predictions can help transportation agencies realize that the active management cycle illustrated here, where the agency takes an active role in dynamically assessing and fine-tuning the performance of their system. Next slide, please. Slide 4 here illustrates an active management continuum starting at static management and then incrementally increasing towards proactive management. So I believe part of the original motivation for the research project was to, number one, publicize the benefits of proactive management, and number two, to publicize the availability of short-term prediction as a helpful mechanism for moving higher along the continuum shown here. Next slide, please. So an agency's approach to traffic signal timing offers one example of how to incrementally move upwards along the active management continuum. For example, the signal timing approach can evolve from pre-timed to actuated to adaptive and then towards a system that leverages machine learning or microsimulation. But as we will see during the course of this webinar, short-term traffic prediction can enhance many different forms of traffic management, and the traffic signal technology is only one example of the many forms of traffic management that can benefit from STP. Next slide, please. Some of you may be familiar with the pilot ICM deployments in San Diego and Dallas many years ago. I believe another original motivation for the research project was that only a small number of agencies have deployed short-term prediction systems in the years since San Diego and Dallas. So this slide shows an illustration of the innovation curve envisioned by Rogers in the 1960s. So according to this curve, and with respect to short-term prediction deployments in this country, it appears we're only at the early adopters stage. And so therefore, it might be in our best interest to accelerate the adoption of this technology and try to reach the far side of this curve as soon as possible. And there's one more concept that I'd like to highlight on this slide, which is that our research found three primary approaches to short-term prediction. Number one, where the predictions are based on machine learning. Number two, where the predictions are based on traffic simulation. And number three, where the predictions are based on simpler forms of data inspection. And so with that, Mohammed is now going to present the next few slides. Thank you.
Thank you, David. This slide shows the deliverable from the project that David mentioned. We had an information exchange event in Washington, D.C. Last year, attended by about 12 different agencies. And before preceding that, we had interviews with those agencies, the exchange their experience and the type of short-term prediction they have done. We have also produced a primer, about 40-page primer that I'm going to summarize what is in it, and then case studies that David's going to quickly mention and other speakers will talk about. And this is the national webinar that is part of that project. Next slide. In the primer, chapter 1 is introduction. Then we had a chapter that talk about the short-term prediction methods, the experiences with them, and the advantages and disadvantages. In chapter 3, we have a review of how these prediction methods can be used in supporting active traffic management applications and what is the expected benefit based on reviews of previous studies. And then chapter 4, we had a chapter about provide information to support the agency in implementing short-term prediction, how to select the best short-term prediction approach, how to improve the maturity of the agencies in AI in general and in prediction capabilities, and also how to include that as part of the system engineering process. Next slide. In general, as David said, there are two main categories of short-term prediction methods. One of them is data analytics, and one of them is simulation or modeling-based short-term prediction. With regard to data analytics, in the early days, there were a lot of research on using statistical methods like time series and so on. And then more recently, there has been more focus on machine learning methods, both supervised learning like neural network, support vector machine and decision trees and so on, but also unsupervised learning as part of the whole process where you include clustering and so on. There are also other types that could be incorporated, like reinforcement learning, which can be optimized the strategies and so on. And then you have more recent, obviously, these are the three main areas of machine learning, but there are more recent advanced and emerging applications like generative AI and agentic AI and so on. However, we found, at least in a couple of case studies, that the agency did not use neither statistical or machine learning, but based on data, they come up with an inspection looking at descriptive statistics and visualization and so on to come up with rules about when to activate strategies, implying prediction of when the breakdown or the congestion happen. So that could be a strategy as an initial strategy that can be implemented in the beginning. Next slide. Simulation-based short-term prediction, yes, here. Simulation-based short-term prediction can range from macroscopic and analytical to mesoscopic to microscopic, but also a multi-resolution modeling where you can model different part of the network in different resolutions. You could combine that with dynamic traffic assignment and discrete choice models that predict, for example, shift in managed lane choices and diversions and so on, route diversion and so on. Based on, you could see that simulation can take longer time than machine learning and running in real time. But again, it depends on what are the models that is used and the size of the network. So there is opportunity to model a smaller size of the network than the traditional application of simulation that we saw, for example, in integrated corridor management project, the initial ones in Dallas and San Diego. You could increase the efficiency somehow by looking at your requirement. Next slide. So again, the latency, there is, these are, after you analyze and predict, there is a decision support system that recommended an action, and then you implement that action and you achieve the desired outcome. However, every one of those steps is associated with latency, particularly in the analyze and predict, and particularly if you're going to use simulation. So for each strategy, you're going to have different requirement for latency. So because first of all, you want to implement these in time to implement the right control strategies, because a lot of these strategies require sometimes, for example, in signal control, if you switch from one plan to the next, you need some transition and so on. Also, if you are implementing a strategy that affects traveler behavior, you want that to be activated ahead of time. So you have to have, for each strategy, you have to have a latency limitation or requirement, and then based on that, you decide on the best approach. Next slide. With regard to with this slide, we see that the different the timeline of active management versus or reactive management versus proactive management. With the proactive management, you predict the breakdown or the congestion or the event before they occur, and then you start implementing the action plan, the action faster than what is done with the reactive. That results in ending the congestion sooner than with the reactive approach. But it could be also if you know that something is going to happen or a congestion could happen, you may be able to actually prevent the congestion from happening. For example, ramp metering. If you wait until the congestion happen and then you activate a ramp metering plan, you are already, if we remember the fundamental diagram that we study in the traffic classes, you're going to be in the unstable regime that is going to be very difficult to bring it back to the uncongested regime. But if you know that you're going to be in the congested regime and do a strategy that prevents you from being in the congested regime, then you can activate that, and you may not have congestion at all if you implement the right strategy. Next slide. And this is some of the benefit that we found in the literature. For example, again, if you apply that to predict the incident or the impact of the incident, you could reduce the congestion by 60% according to Yao and Khan. You could predict incident clearance time with 85 to 90% reliability. You can provide advanced warning for a driver approaching incident, and you can reduce fatal and injury crashes by 13%. Obviously, the more of these studies we're going to have and more evaluation of their benefit, that will provide additional information for a future implementation. Next slide. And this slide just shows that how implementing active traffic management can improve reliability. Basically, the width of the band around the average as an indicator of the reliability. And with reactive, it is already doing that, as you see. But with proactive, we expect those bands around the averages, in addition to the averages, will be improved. Next slide. One of the chapters in the primer is talking about how to identify the right short-term prediction methods. Obviously, a machine learning method can be effective when your quantity and quality of data are high and sufficient. And there is no, however, those normally have disadvantages when we want to look at situations where the alternatives have not been implemented in the field. So in that case, you would not be able to know based on machine learning what is the impact of those different alternative plans. With the simulation, again, it requires quality and quantity of data, possibly a little bit less than machine learning, but still have to be high quality and quantity. The geographic limits are relatively small, so that you don't have a big or long time running these models. And it is one of its main strengths is that it allows you to analyze multiple response plan in real time on the fly. You can feed it to the simulation, and the results can be fed to a decision support system that can tell us which plan perform better according to identify performance measures. And again, latencies should be considered. The data inspection methods, this could be a good initial way of doing the prediction, and the agencies that has already implemented, some of them said the next step is for them to implement machine learning. Some of the implementation may be simple enough that you don't need to go to a machine learning or deep learning or things like that. So this could be also a method that can be selected from, the agency can select from. Next slide. And this is a project that David and I and other work on for the USDOT JPO program to develop capability maturity model for AI-enabled ITS. Basically, as some of you are very familiar with the TISMO capability maturity model and capability maturity frameworks, this is similar to it, but it's related to AI application. So one can think about it also how it applied to short-term prediction, where on the left you have the institutional dimension like culture and business process and collaboration and workforce. And on the right is the technical part, which is the data and infrastructure, the modeling and application, and the integration and operation. And then cybersecurity is in the middle. It has both the institutional component, the subdimension and aspects, and the technical. That's why you see it's colored as the combination of the two. Next slide. And then we also in chapter 3 or 4 in the primer, we talk about the system engineering process and how the AI and a machine short-term prediction should be incorporated as part of that process, from feasibility study to concept of operation to requirement analysis to design and so on. And then after that to evaluate it and revisit it as time goes by. So that's very important aspect as any ITS application to include it as a system engineering process. I think this is my last slide, David.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mohammed. All right. So as Mohammed noted a few slides ago, one of the deliverables from the project was a set of 3 fact sheets to publish some of the interesting details about some of the real-world STP deployments across the country. So in the next few slides, I'll describe some of the findings from the real-world deployments at the Delaware DOT and at the city of Dubuque, Iowa. Our third fact sheet was for Cranberry Township in Pennsylvania, but later this hour, we'll hear another presentation from Kelly Maurer that specifically focuses on that deployment. So regarding the Delaware DOT deployment, the research team felt that DelDOT's STP system was a strong role model because it fully leverages machine learning. Other factors that led to DelDOT having a strong system include a statewide strategic plan for transportation management that dates back to 1997, close partnerships with academia and the private sector, the small size of the state of Delaware making it easier to implement certain actions, and finally, a strong support for innovation from agency leadership on down. Next slide, please. This slide highlights some of the technical aspects of DelDOT's STP system. The system has constant access to historic and real-time data from a multitude of sources as illustrated in the figure. The system can predict key traffic flow metrics between 5 minutes and 60 minutes into the future. The system facilitates real-time changes to the signal timing plans to more seamlessly accommodate disruptions that would have been unexpected by humans until it was too late. And beyond the signal timings, the system can also recommend and implement other traffic management strategies in response to miscellaneous traffic disruptions. Next slide, please. The next example involves the city of Dubuque in the state of Iowa. Similar to the examples from DelDOT and Cranberry Township, the city of Dubuque benefited from multiple decades of previous investments in technology infrastructure. And similar to the Cranberry Township system that you'll hear about shortly, the city of Dubuque also followed the system's engineering process. However, a key difference between this example and the others is that this one leverages traffic simulation-based STP. And notably, the pilot ICM deployments in San Diego and Dallas many years ago also demonstrated the use of traffic simulation-based STP. Next slide, please. This slide highlights some of the technical aspects of the city of Dubuque's STP system. A traffic status change or capacity change, such as an incident, a planned closure, or a demand surge, will trigger a simulation of rerouting alternatives. The simulation model then feeds information to a decision support system. For minor events or incidents, the decision support system can make minor green time adjustments that increase the use of detour routes. But for major events, the simulation model can evaluate different cycle lengths along the predefined detour routes, and the traffic signals along those routes can automatically transition to the cycle lengths producing the lowest delays within those simulation runs. In addition to facilitating the signal timing adjustments, the STP system also facilitates the posting of proactive traveler information onto dynamic message signs within the city. Next slide, please. All right, so thank you very much. This concludes our high-level overview of the outcomes from the project, and so we'll keep an eye on the Q&A pod for questions that you may have. And with that, I believe we can now switch over to our second speaker and our second presentation. Thank you.
Hey, Kelly, you are muted, I believe.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can't see you yet,
Okay.
but we can hear you.
See if that video comes up. I am going to share my screen to start the presentation. Are you able to see it?
Yep, looks great. And we don't see your video yet, but your presentation looks great.
Okay, well, I think we'll get started. Following up on the information that David and Mohammed presented, I'm going to speak a little bit more on actual real world deployment. So my name is Kelly Maurer. I am the Director of Public Works for Cranberry Township, and we do have a short-term traffic prediction model that we do use. So I'm going to go into a little bit of how we use it and how it benefits us. So just a little bit of background, just to let you know where Cranberry Township is. We are located in western Pennsylvania, about 25 miles north of the city of Pittsburgh. We are a second-class township. We are not a city. And just our area there, we're about 23 square miles, and I'm in charge of Public Works, and we have about 139 miles of roads that we maintain. So I think what makes Cranberry unique is we're at the crossroads of two interstate systems in Pennsylvania. So Interstate 79 runs north and south, pretty much from Lake Erie in northern PA all the way down to Florida. And then we also have an interchange here for I-76, which is our toll road, the Pennsylvania Turnpike. They both cross in this municipality, which is obviously a destination for people to be able to get on these interstate highways. And about in the middle 1990s, they also connected Interstate 79 into downtown Pittsburgh. And that was the construction of I-279. So that really was a housing boom in the area. We went from a rural community of 15,000 people, as you can see, in 1990 to about a little over 35,000 today. And they're expecting our population is going to top off at about 50,000 people. So a lot of that is growth, a lot of recreation, as you can see here in the pictures, and housing development. And that's kind of are a little bit about us. So talking traffic, which we're here to talk about today, I kind of zoomed in to show you the map is the location of those interstates. As I said, I-79 running north-south, Pennsylvania Turnpike generally northwest to southeast. And then we do have our highways, which would be state routes, arterials. Route 19 parallels the I-79 corridor for its length. So lots of exits, when there's incidents on the highway, the interstate, they do get off and kind of follow that Route 19 pattern, as well as when there's incidents on the turnpike. The picture I showed on the left is our main intersection, our hub to say, and that's the intersection of Route 19, Freedom Road, and Route 228. That intersection is dual lefts, dual throughs, and a right turn lane in all four directions. It carries about 80 to 100,000 vehicles a day, through the township. We can see from different data sources, it's about 50% of our township residents, and 50% of that is people from outside the township trying to get on these limited access highways. Wanted to give you a little overview of some of that, of our location with proximity to the interstate with the pictures on the bottom. The one on the left kind of shows Interstate 79 is on the right-hand side, and then Route 19 is on the left. A commercial corridor that we have. This doesn't even show the half of it, but definitely restaurants, businesses along that route, heavily traveled as it is. The middle picture is our connector between I-79 and the PA Turnpike. This was built within the last decade, 10 to 15 years. Before you had to exit one interstate to get on the other. Now you can have a direct connection, but people do get off for fuel and lodging and restaurants and things like that. And then the area on the bottom right, I wanted to show, that's kind of our growing corridor. And this is an exit off of I-79 onto 228. The township actually constructed the fly under, if you can see kind of in the middle of the screen. And that is so you can get off 79 and directly go to that area on the north without having to touch any of our arterial network. That building there in the background is the Pittsburgh Penguins hockey team. That's where they practice. We're getting a Wegmans grocery store past that, and then there's a mixed-use development going beyond that. So really an area of growth for the township. So that was kind of, just laying the scene of what traffic. We do manage traffic from a traffic operations center. That's myself with my back to everybody, but we do have a manager of this center as well as a crew of 3, and they are technicians in the field. So very important to keep these traffic signals, operating and moving traffic. We do that using Centrex Mobility by Econolite. That's our management system. We have used Centrex since the mid-90s when we were a closed loop system. And as you mentioned, we have kind of grown with them, becoming adaptive. Now it was EDaptive, which used signal performance measures, and now we're using Centrex Mobility. We do manage 54 traffic signals, 46 are in the township, and 11 signals are in 4 neighboring communities, and that's really so that you can get to those interstates. Talked about a little bit in the previous presentations. We have leveraged over the last 10 years about 10 million in PennDOT funding, and that's to keep our traffic signal upgraded. It is all connected by fiber. We do have non-invasive technology, loops and video. I'm not loops, radar and video, no loops. And then we are now changing out all our controllers, making sure they are the highest standard to be able to talk with all this communication. As far as this short-term predictive model, we are very fortunate to be located just north of Carnegie Mellon University. They have coordinated with us a number of times to test. We have a lot of traffic out here that we share our traffic data with CMU. We also, it was the initial deployment of autonomous vehicles about 15 years ago were tested in Cranberry. And a lot of V2I, V2X technology is tested here as well. I also mentioned Southwest PA Commission is also our regional MPO, and we do a lot with them. But I really put this tagline on the bottom about research, development, and deployment. So one big part of this, and I kind of speak about in R&D, is the deployment end and making something that is really useful for the end user, easy to use, and really works for a benefit in the real world. So I'm going to kind of talk about that a little bit today. So I'm going to put up this screen. We had this presentation all prepared. We talk about incidents on the interstates, which is what we're going to talk about today. But I thought I'd share this one from this morning. So it's kind of a timely that we did have an incident on the interstate this morning. We had a cow that had fallen off a truck on Interstate 79. This happened about 7 a.m. this morning. The cow was finally corralled, I'll say, at 10:30 this morning. So, for over about 2.5 to 3 hours, we did have the interstate closed down. Obviously, our crews were out there assisting with that, but we also, these contingency plans and this predictive modeling were put in effect because all lanes of 79 were closed and all that traffic was rerouted to our Route 19. So kind of a apropos example today when I was making this presentation, but I'll kind of get into some details on how this all works, but that was a prime example. So this is where we started using this traffic predictive modeling. As I said, CMU is a great partner with us, and they have a smart mobility challenge they do every year. So in about 2015, they came to Cranberry Township and asked, what they could help us with. This was about the time we were testing autonomous vehicles and had a lot of interaction with them. And we really said the impact of when there was incidents on these limited access highways, how it really affected us, and we were pretty much at gridlock. And these happen routinely. So we came up with some contingency plans along with CMU and some of our traffic engineering partners. We came up with 10 different plans, and that's really necessary to flush traffic because it varies where the crash is on the interstates, whether it's north of our township south, people are getting off, if they're getting off at the interchange that's within the township, as well as on the turnpike. That is also a different route, a little more longer detours involved when there's incidents on that roadway. And then there's also differences in the AM and PM. So, we had these 10 flush plan routes that we were using. We were using them for about 3 or 4 years, and CMU came back and asked us what else they could help us with. So in about 2018 is the picture here, and they started talking to us about these the short-term predictive modeling, and if they could give us a heads up when the traffic was going to build in Cranberry, it wouldn't reach gridlock. We would be able to implement these plans ahead of time and keep traffic flowing. And I can tell you since this time, we've been using it since 2018. It is something we use weekly. It is still in effect. It is still helping us manage traffic, and just it is a we are a case study in success of this effort. I'm going to go into kind of how we are involved in this project and how it's user friendly for us. But if you'd want more information on this project, there is obviously a final research report that's available online. This has information on, the coding that was involved and the testing and all of that. But I'm going to talk more on a layman's terms about how it impacts us. So CMU met with us, and this does have different inputs. We talked about how you have to put inputs into the system. We decided on an area of about 30 minutes from Cranberry Township. That takes you all the way into the city of Pittsburgh. When there's any crashes on the interstate, when it is closed, that is about what will impact us in Cranberry Township. So, that's between even the people getting off the turnpike, people heading into the city of Pittsburgh. So that has really been our focus. It continues to this day, but it even uses historical information of incidents and when they back up and how long it takes to hit Cranberry Township. They also input PennDOT traffic incident reports and also weather information. We do see a lot of crashes in the snow, in icy conditions, things like that. So the weather is important as well. So I talked about the study. Obviously, there's coding then involved on the CMU end. That's a rules-based plan that encodes this input and then gives us a proactive recommendation to put in a contingency plan. And that really is the crust of it. And what is so important to us is that we have that heads up in incident management to implement a plan, to try to flush that traffic out before it even starts. So the dashboard on the right there is what we see. It is up in our traffic operations center daily. It can give us that visual representation when we see the streets turning red or yellow, on the interstates, but as well as that forecasted model, that speed prediction at the bottom kind of tells us what is coming up and then maybe any incidents that have been reported. But I always talk about the deployment end in this, and what always amazes me is all of these algorithms and this coding and all this machine learning and how it's refined. For us as the end user is very simple. We do not manage the TOC 24 hours a day. It's only managed while we are here. But what this does is when there is an incident on the interstate, it does give us that heads up. We get the email that is shown on the right, and it's very simple. It tells us what plan is recommended, where the closure is, what time of day it is, and that is enough to have us that manage the traffic center, myself, our manager, and even the crew can see that. And that's what happened this morning. We got this message, we know something is going on, and we can start paying attention. At this point, our plans are still manual, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but you'll see that's our traffic management system there on the bottom right. Those would all change into our plans that we put in place. They are plans 80 through 90. They would take over when they're manually put in, but wanted to kind of show you, when I talk about how this has been used since 2018, I pulled up the data from the last month. So this is current. This is September and October in 2025, and we had over 20 alerts during that time. So this is not something that has gone by the wayside. We use this, as you can see, every week, and it really is a tool that helps us manage our traffic system. Talking about next steps, I guess, in this system is making this automatic. So we still put this plan in manually. We are in a pilot with CMU and with our traffic software developers to have this be automatic in the system. So we've been piloting this since about June, and has had some trials and tribulations. So I think we have a lot of contingency plans that's causing it a little bit of distraction or implementation issues, but really want this to be done so it happens automatically and it doesn't have to have a human interaction in this process. It's still the same, 30-mile radius. They're using KPIs here, and we can monitor side by side. The CMU alerts tell us when it begins, and then we get an email at the end when it ends. These alerts here that we're getting from this system are about every 10 minutes, and it would reassess. So we can see that we are confident in that the machine learning is doing its part and it's telling us the right time. We're just having a little bit of problems on the implementation end. So hopefully we are working that out. We meet once a week with the developers and providing them feedback, and that's that deployment piece. Lastly, I kind of wanted to share, they asked me to share some lessons learned. Obviously, we are using this system and the predictive modeling because it's prompt and effective traffic management. It helps us manage the traffic in our system. It was really a shift, as we're trying to do in most things, to be reactive and less proactive. That really, as I think Mohammed mentioned, that is decreasing that traffic from building. When we put in these plans, we also have a traffic alert system that goes out. We have 5,000 subscribers, and we tell them, crash in this location on 79, contingency plans in place, please seek alternate routes, and just makes everyone aware. Obviously, the end goal is to reduce congestion, increase safety, which we have found to be the case. Any of this machine learning and AI, as a municipal public works director with, budget constraints now, staffing constraints, anything we can do saves us money and time. We also use machine learning to do our pavement analysis on what roads we're going to pave. We use it in our winter maintenance. We have pavement sensors that give us a heads up in advance on when to deploy our crews. So really using this technology in many different ways. When I speak to other communities, I try to tell them to try new technologies. Some things may work and may not, but we'll never know unless you have a deployment partner to be able to test these. And that's the next step about being a deployment partner. I think some of the software that we're having going through now is we are being that deployment partner and making sure it really works in the real world. Obviously, the last thing I usually share is share your success, kind of what I'm doing today. We want to share this with other communities as well as academia and government to show that what you do really does make a difference to the actual motorists in real township communities. The blurb on the right is I do sometimes go on the local news talking about some of these efforts. And in this case, we had a broadcast last year that went national. So that's always, we feel like maybe we're doing something at Cranberry that we can share with others. I will answer any questions at the end, I think, on the chat group, but here is my information. We're happy to do tours or share our, positives and negatives and things that we have learned along the way. So here's my email address and phone number. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. And thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Kelly. Let me share my screen here. My name is Harish Rupati. I'm with Virginia Department of Transportation. Today, I'm going to share some of the work we're doing in the short-term predictions from a large state DOT perspective and from a large regional perspective as well. So I'm going to use a couple of things. One, couple of projects we have been working on internally in terms of crash risk prediction modeling, whether it's our internal employee safety perspective or from a crash perspective on the highways, as well as one of the largest programs that we have in metropolitan Washington region in Northern Virginia, something called Regional Multimodal Mobility Program and some of the projects. And before I get into the data, today I'm going to probably use that RM3P projects as a use case, but some of the lessons learned and other things are based on some of the work we have been doing over the years. So when we look at traffic in Northern Virginia, which is, for those of you who do not know, in general, it's outside of Washington, D.C., just other side of the river. And when we see that, and it's true everywhere, lots of individuals making their own independent decisions collectively, along with weather, types of vehicles you have on the road, infrastructure, collectively impact the system. So in order to influence and improve, we have to collectively look at all of that as a whole. And that's what we are trying to do on this project, which you can see on the map just outside of the district. We have large metropolitan area with metro subway system, regional buses, local buses, as well as the Virginia Railway Express, which runs parallel to I-95 corridor, north-south. We have express lanes on I-95, 495, and I-66. And so we have all modes of transportation. We have parkways, we have bike routes, and people bike from Northern Virginia to DC on WNOD Trail and some of the other trails as well. We have all modes of transportation serving the region. So those of us who are in the traffic operations business and the incident management business, we have all evolved from each agency responding to doing their own things to collectively responding with unified command. But in transportation management, each agency usually responds and deals with incidents on their own. And what we are trying to do in this program is how can we use collaboratively the real-time data that's available to improve travel safety and reliability and mobility in the region. That means it's not VDOT or Metro or local signal operator or the local bus operator, but we are all responding to the same incident, whether it happens on the highway or on the subway or on somewhere else. But all of us have the same situational awareness, and all of us contribute to moving people around the disruption. So that's the idea behind the program. In order to do that, we went through a lot of challenges of collecting all the data from all modes and all agencies into that what we call data exchange platform there in the middle that you see. Then using that data, we're trying to address on both sides of the equation of demand and supply. On the supply side of optimizing our network to get around the disruption is what we are using, that decision support tool, where all the agencies have the same situational awareness and respond to the incident collectively with single response as opposed to multiple uncoordinated responses or no response from some agencies. And so on the demand side of the equation, we have another project, dynamic incentivization, which many of us are familiar with, traditional transportation demand management. But in this program, what we are trying to do is use the real-time data to provide that real-time incentives to the folks on the road to change their behavior that moment. And that's the challenge we are trying to, take care of, where you need people to respond, and we need to provide that information, and we need to provide incentives for them to change their behavior, to reduce the demand on the system. That means they turn around and go back home or take a metro or some other mode of transportation, change the time, go to near Starbucks using the incentive to go work from there for the next hour to go get back on the road at later in the day. So lots of these options are available. We're working through. And then also we have about 45,000 parking spaces in the region with park and ride lots. Some of them get filled by 7:30 in the morning. Some don't get filled. Only maybe 50% of the lot is full. And also it's not needed or necessary in our mind to count every space or count all the traffic going in and out of every lot, unlike shopping malls or the airports where people come in and out all day long. Most of the park and ride lots get filled in the morning in one end to the other end and get emptied out end of the day. So we're looking at alternative ways to collect the data without installing a lot of equipment to reduce maintenance on those operations on that equipment. We're looking at parking data collection through private sector partners that could generate the data with either limited installation or no installation of hardware. So that's our overall program. I'm going to focus today on the subject of decision support system and then move into that prediction piece of it, just to kind of, you can see the funnel. So we have within that decision support system, there are various modules. There's a rules engine, rules and logic that selects multimodal response plans based on current and future incident conditions. Then in order to do that, we need to create those cross-agency strategies and tactics that each agency can live with. It doesn't help anyone if we say you can put 10 buses on the road when the transit partners don't have 10 buses sitting in the lot with 10 drivers to quickly deploy them. So we have been working with all the 20 plus partners to create those cross-agency strategies. If incident happens on this mode here, how would everybody react, and so on and so forth. So we have developed some initial response plans. I'm sure it'll be an ongoing work, and then use that predictive engine to predict hotspots or potential for crashes or high-risk locations. What will that do to congestion? Some of the commuter parking availability and transit next stop, and the buses are coming through. When would they get to the next stop given that roadway conditions to be predicted? There is a modeling engine portion of that where real-time simulation is evaluating all these response plans that's selected through the rules, and then relative to each other, score them so operator can pick a recommendation that works or modify the recommendation coming out of the system. There's a graphical user interface for operators to interact with the system as well. So I'm going to next talk about that prediction engine and what we are trying to do. There is that congestion prediction piece that we are looking at in 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 1 hour into the future. There's a map viewer the operator can use to select the times with a slider. Also, we model that congestion based on the historical traffic patterns to forecast the traffic speeds. And that's what, when we say congestion, that's what we are using to predict that congestion. What are going to be the speeds on the various segments of the highways and arterials and all the whole network around it. We're hoping that this capability enables operations team to proactively manage congestion because they can anticipate slowdowns, but also they can see if they see the delay, is the delay increasing in the future or is it going to decrease? Now you're on the tail end of the curve. So that allows them to react much better and may eliminate some of the surprises. Incident risk prediction, you see that it's not an incident prediction, we're predicting the risk that identifies the relative probability of incidents and on all roadways and pick the highest probability locations and highlight them in a different color. The model, again, generates in horizons of 15, 30, 45 minutes to 60 minutes into the future. And by identifying those high-risk segments, we are going to use that information to proactively deploy resources or react quickly because we're aware of that potential and get better response from multiple agencies together. So some of what I'm going to share as lessons learned here are again based on some of these. And we have deployed a pilot stage first, and that pilot, we learned a lot. As we speak, we are going through system acceptance testing for the broader regional deployment. Once we deploy that, we will see how exactly it scales from the pilot to region, and there's a lot more that we need to do to learn from those two, both congestion as well as the incident risk prediction on a regional scale. We're looking at a region that has 2.5 million people living, plus another 500,000 people coming from District of Columbia or Maryland, transiting through to work or just going through the area. So every day we're dealing with 3 million population in that geographical region that we are covering with this system. So it's a lot of information to look at and to use that in the prediction models. Again, parking availability, like I mentioned, we're looking into, again, the same increments because we want to see the prediction and see if we can provide that information to the commuters in advance because they are in the interstate highway somewhere trying to exit to get to the nearest park and ride lot facility. By the time they get there, park and ride lot is full. Now they park on the grass or do other things or try to find the next lot. And that creates some frustration on their part. If we can smooth that out, they may end up using the park and ride lots more, and more people may use transit rather than driving alone. And also part of this, like I mentioned, we have various transit providers that they have automated vehicle locator systems on them based on their GPS. If we tie that to the traffic conditions and what we are monitoring on the arterials and interstates, what travel times we're predicting, we can also predict when that bus would arrive at their next stop. And some of the ones on the interstates, if there is an incident, it takes forever for them to get through that bottleneck. They may have to do something else. And some of them already have been doing to take them to nearest metro stop and stop the route there and turn around to come back, as opposed to going all the way to the District of Columbia inside. So there are strategies that they can use if they can predict when that bus will arrive, and also that heading back to the depot to back use the same bus for the second route also gets impacted as well. So we are trying to use this system to do that, to make transit more efficient. So with that said, I want to share some lessons we learned and our thought process after going through these conversations in the last few years. When you talk about the prediction, first thing comes to mind is every time I look at any financial predictions or financial advice from anyone is that SEC disclaimer that past performance is not an indicator of future results. In my mind, I'm beginning to think is, does it apply to traffic prediction and how much? We are predicting the next hour based on some of the past performance of the system under similar conditions. But in the past, many things have changed. The COVID is an example. If not, we could have built another interchange that diverted traffic some more. Traffic patterns are not constant. Our transportation system is not constant. Metro service changes and bus routes have been changed and so many other things. People are moving in and out. You have a traffic mix when we talk about drivers and our users of the transportation system. Washington, D.C. region has most transient population. Many people in Pentagon come here for 2-year assignment, or many people in D.C. working from all over the world come here to work and then leave it in the various embassies. So we have a population that's changing quite a bit every year. And so from that perspective, we use the data to predict something. How accurately could we do it? And that's partly what we are trying to learn. It's like an example of water flow modeling. Are we trying to model individual water molecules? Are we trying to predict the flow of water as a whole? And so some of that thinking we need to have, and we look at that and we look at how granular you want that data to be in using those data to do the models. So from that perspective, target setting is really important to measure the accuracy. When we say 90%, 95%, when we talk to the engineers and others, they're all used to that 95% prediction. But accuracy, is that realistic? If you say I want to predict an incident at mile marker 10 at 7 o'clock in the morning, is that realistic? Or should we set the target, that's where we are heading with this, with project and our work, is incident occurred in the top 10% of the segments or top 5% of the segments that we have in our system or that we predicted. That's where relative risk, and that's what we are measuring, and see then how accurately this model can predict. And also the speed. One of the things we looked at speed prediction is what deviations that we're going to allow in the prediction accuracy. If you say 5 miles plus or minus, you already have 10 miles spread. And a lot of engineers want this to be exact and precise, 2.5 miles plus or minus, or 2 miles plus or minus. I'm not sure that is realistic, so we're looking at that is 5 miles plus or minus, or is it 10 miles? What is, and how useful it is. When you look at the traffic congestion prediction, how do you measure? That's the other thing we learn. If you measure 15-minute intervals throughout the day, you get a different answer on how accurate you are. Or you look at 24-hour period, the model would predict really well when there is no congestion. That will dwarf the actual incident time. When something happened, you get bad prediction. The model still could show very accurate prediction, but it's not useful to the end user. So that's something really important we learn and want to share that. So maybe any conversation on the predictions to start first on what target you're trying to get and how accurate you want that to be. How do you measure it? And then work backwards to the model development itself. And model selection, again, a lot of engineers were in the room argued back and forth on how well the vendor will have to show you how the model works, what details we need to learn about the model, how it calculates. We all grew up as engineers, doing actual calculations versus in machine learning and some of these advanced models we're using. Do we really need to understand how? Just like you ask, when you get an investment advice from your financial advisor or an engineering consultant giving you some advice, do you know how their brain truly operates, a neural network, and the brain neurons are fired to come up with that answer? Or would you look at that, what qualifications they have, what experiences they have gone through, and then make the selection? And then when they give you recommendations, they have to give you why they're making those recommendations. And so our thought process in the short-term predictions, probably we need to be open-minded and look at it differently than our traditional engineering training allows us to do. So from that perspective, we looked at a lot of models, narrowed the list down to small groups, select 3 models, and did a little bit more work on those, looking at that performance of those selected one, and that's what would allow us to do that. And then we could always change that model based on some of the lessons we learned from deploying that and adjust again. Again, these models drift. There's never going to be the same model that you can work on forever. So once your data changes, you react and you respond. Next year, the traffic conditions are going to, you have to continuously update those models and tweak the models and retrain the models. And that's part of what we're looking at as well. That's something we need to keep in mind. It's not just initial deployment, how well you maintain the model, monitor the model performance. Like I mentioned, a lot of data, the behavior of the driver, how do you model that in this prediction? And there's not going to be enough data or type of data you need to get started with. And data is never going to be fully accurate. I mean, that's the reality of any data anywhere else. Even the financial sector, they deal with that, or any other sector. We'll start looking at other industries, how they deal with that. So one of the lessons learned from that is we have to start somewhere with what we have and improve over time. And one of the things we are now attempting to do and understand better is the use of synthetic data technique. I'll talk a little bit about that to train the models. And the reason for that is when you do a classification algorithm and based on training that model, when there is an incident and there's a rain, or when there's an incident, you look at the data, there is a rain 10 minutes before or whatever. Now you train that model to do that. Again, every time there is rain, is the model going to say there's going to be a crash? Versus you train the model to eliminate that bias. If you create that synthetic data or additional data set in the same stream 10 other times, the rain happened, no crash happened, Now the model may react differently than if you just train the model based on only incident data. So we're looking to see how we could create that all the data when there is an incident, when there is no incident. So model is trained to understand the time of day to all the weather factors and everything else. And also the other thing, when you look at forecasting 1 hour into the future, incident information, when the incident happened, police report may give you really good information about the weather and all that stuff. But that may not be the one you're modeling. You need to know what happened an hour before. What is the weather forecast? You're looking at a weather forecast now. What's the National Weather Service or any other private source you're looking at is saying from now to an hour into the future. It may change an hour from now. That conditions may not happen. So now you need to go back and truly get that accurate model. For every incident, you have to go back an hour before and see what the forecast was. That's the challenge we had, the forecast availability when you go back in time to try to model that. That's where we found a lot of challenges in finding the right data. Again, these are all some of the lessons we learned going through that. So synthetic data is, again, you can mimic the real data based on some statistical models, and there's a lot of science behind it. It's published already. It's used widely in financial sector. So you can use that to fill missing data, correct the data, or like I said, sometimes you create that synthetic data when there is no incident or other non-event related information as well, so you can model better without any bias, at least reduce the bias. So that's and the other thing that I want to close out before we run out of time is that these deployments and predictions that we can do, but deploying that technology by itself or the model, how accurate that is by itself, is not an end all. Now we've learned, especially when we are dealing with on our side with 20 agencies, how do people react to that? What we found when we started asking questions about what are they going to do with it, how do they use this, they're falling back on their standard operating procedures and their muscle memory rather than the information that they are going to get from the system that's not available to them today. They have not experienced that. So they cannot look into the future to say, oh, if that's available, I would react this way. That comes at an operator level after going through some growing pains. And so we need to focus on the deployment side. How do we train people? How much in advance you bring them to the table to have those conversations? You can give them the prediction. If they don't know how to use it, they don't deploy, they don't use it because they don't understand enough of it, because you have not developed that user interface and training pieces, then it's not going to be successful. So the process is, like I said, we need to work with them in changing the SOPs to incorporate how do they use this prediction information in making their decisions in collaboration with others. That's again a big change from the people perspective as well. Right now they're making their own decisions. Now they have to collaborate with somebody. So, and the tools and technologies, they're getting better every day. What we started on this project 2019 when we conceptualized this to today, the world of technology changed by leaps and bounds. If I were to start today, I might have done it differently, but we need to continue to evolve with the technology, with the tools, and incorporating that from the technology perspective. I think Kelly talked about how do you integrate that into your own traffic management system, or is it a separate system sitting on the side? A lot of those. How much autonomy are you going to give to the system versus human in the loop? A lot of those conversations are important that we need to have before you deploy or think about deploying any predictive algorithms in the traffic management. So I think that's my last slide, and here's my contact information. I'm going to turn it over to, I guess, David to moderate the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Ari. So we have a few minutes here until for Q&A for any of the three presentations, and you can feel free to use the Q&A pod as Adam mentioned. While we're waiting for a question, Kelly, I was curious about how when Cranberry Township achieves a or indicates that a routing is needed, which technologies.
Hey everyone, it looks like we perhaps lost David there due to internet issues. So as we wait for him to log back on, a quick reminder that if you have any questions, please do feel free to put them into the Q&A pod that is there on the right. We've had a couple questions about sharing presentations. Reminder in the chat pod that you can sign up for our newsletter to receive the recording as soon as it's available. And that if you have any desire for presentations, please contact the presenters directly. David, I'll turn it back over to you. You dropped out when you were about to ask a question of Cranberry Township, I believe.
Yeah, thanks so much, Adam. Yeah, well, I'm glad the outage happened now instead of during the main presentation. So, Kelly, are you still with us?
I am. I'm not able to turn on my video, but it says it's still being disabled by the host, but I am still here.
Okay, all good. So I was curious as to when your system detects a need to do a rerouting. I'm curious about which technologies you currently employ for that, whether it's the automatic signal timing changes or changes to the driver information, whether it's through gantries or other communication methods, and just what are the array of techniques that you use to achieve that rerouting when needed?
Right. So there is a varied. Normally we get that first alert from CMU, and that kind of makes us start watching. We are happy to report that a lot of times our signal system can adapt, and it does make those changes. It's only usually really when we have the interstate closed. When like this morning when we have multiple hours of all that traffic coming on, then we do still put those contingency plans in place. But they are manual. So we do those manually. As I said, we're really working diligently on trying to have that be automatic. And then, as I said, message boards, we do have that alert system that goes out. So it does work hand in hand. Really trying to have people like that incident management, avoid the scene. If they don't need to go out, stay home for that time and not add to the traffic.
Okay, so keeping in mind that humans are still in the loop, you change the signal timings and you do the driver information. Are there any other technologies that you use to achieve the rerouting? Or is that pretty much the main focus, those
Yeah,
two?
that is. We do have there is a main TMC for PennDOT down in Pittsburgh. So we usually are in coordination with them. They get our alerts as well as the school district for things like that. But usually they can feed off of us. By putting that alert out, they know that there is a plan in place, there is something going on, and we are watching it.
All right, thanks so much, Kelly. So let's see, if there's no Q&A pod questions for now, I'd like to again thank Kelly and Hari so much for sharing your deployments with us. I'd like to thank Dr. Hadi for his time and expertise as always. And Adam, thanks so much to NOCO for helping us to share our project outcomes. Thank you very much, everyone. Adam, you might be muted.